Content warning. This episode contains material of a highly sensitive nature, including sexual assault, child abuse, and self-harm that may be triggering for some individuals. Well met, and welcome to Screen King, Stephen King from Page to Screen. My name is Matt, and with me, as always, is Matty Loves Movies resident Stephen King expert, Stacy Morris. Hello, Stacy.
Hello. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call myself an expert on anything, but
Listen,
I'll take it.
Listen, there are two hosts on this channel so far, you and me, and you are the bigger expert on Stephen King. So as of now, you're the resident expert in this movie space. But today we are going to be discussing the book Gerald's Game as well as the movie Gerald's Game. No need for preamble this time. Last time we told you all about our Stephen King experience, but if you want to know about that, go watch the Misery episode. So let's just get right into it. The book, Gerald's Game. Stacy, had you read this book before?
A long time ago. Okay. I remembered the basic premise, the father, some of the father stuff, and the degloving. Those are the things I remember. The degloving stuck with me.
I had not read this before. This was my first time reading it, and I had seen the movie before this because I did a Mike Flanagan I watched all of his movies a year ago or so, and so I watched this as part of that. I actually didn't realize it was Stephen King until I guess not right when I watched it, but it took a while before I realized that Gerald's Game movie that was on Netflix was Stephen King, was adaptation of Stephen King book. I actually, and this is so weird, I knew it wasn't related to the Ripley series of books, but there is one called Ripley's Game, and every time I saw that, it made me think of Ripley's Game, and so for some reason, I don't know, I never got around to it, and then finally I watched it, and so that was my only experience. And let me tell you, I did not expect the amount of graphic sexual assault that I was going to be reading in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the thing, and I'll just come straight out with it. I didn't love this book. I did not have a great time with it. I feel like I have fonder thoughts about it when I think back to it than I had while reading it. And I think a big part of that is how deep it goes into the sexual assault. Not that you can't do that in a book or whatever,
right?
But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this because as a woman, I imagine that you might have a different perspective than me. But for me, reading as this man who's writing this, making just this meal out of all of the stuff, really made me uncomfortable in a way that I've read books that feature sexual assault, usually written by women, and it doesn't feel quite as exploitative. And so that's kind of how it felt to me, a lot of it. Like, and let me just say before I turn it over to you, because I had only seen the movie, the fact that it starts with him having a heart attack while trying to assault her was the first big shock. And then later, especially all the stuff with the dad, like I did not expect it to feel the way it felt when I was reading that. So I'll turn it over to you. How did you feel about that aspect of it?
Well, I think maybe because I've read King since I was a child, but
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I never think about him as a white cis male while I'm reading his books, because I
Okay.
feel like he's always done a good job with, like, he has a lot of main characters that are strong women.
Yep.
There was kind of a whole like time period in this time that he was writing a bunch of those. So I just don't associate. And he writes different ethnicities, I feel like, fairly well. Maybe it's just because I followed him on Twitter and know his politics and see interviews with him and know what kind of guy he is, that I know that, he's decent for the most part. He's not like
Right.
somebody gross, and he's been married
Right.
for like longer than I've been alive. And, so it doesn't bother me in that sense. I found the stuff in the beginning with the husband, it was much more than I remembered. I just remembered he handcuffs her and has a heart attack and dies. I didn't even
Right.
remember the like assault aspect of it.
Yeah.
I did think I thought it was done well. The stuff with her dad. So this is going to sound awful. I'm going to sound awful right now. But the
Okay.
stuff with her dad, on the spectrum of sexual assault, is not that it's not bad. Like, I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
it's not that bad, like that it happened, but I'm saying on the spectrum of things that could have happened in a sexual assault, it's on the lesser end. So it didn't bother me that much. It is uncomfortable to read, just because
Mm-hmm.
it's just an uncomfortable thing. Like, it's, as
Right.
they would say today, it's cringe while you're kind of in this mindset. And I did actually reread it. I didn't listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that may have played into it a little bit. But I think it's handled well. I think the buildup is good to when we actually find out what happened with her dad,
Mm-hmm.
and all that is handled well. Also, plus, like, the assault in the beginning makes us not care about him dying and the dog eating him and everything else. It makes it like, well, F you. Like, we care because she's stuck, but
Right.
we don't so much care about him.
Right, which is interesting because, as I said, I'd only watched the movie, and so in the movie, while he is not a great dude, he's
Mhm.
not actively trying to rape her
Right. And he's
in the
basically, in
movie.
the book, he just like decides that she's playing a game and he's going to ignore all pleas for him to stop her,
Right,
which is
right.
disgusting.
So yeah, in the movie, his death is a little bit more sympathetic than in the
Mhm.
book. Um, I kind of hated that. I love that she kicked him, like, to get him
Mhm.
off of her. I hate that that's the reason he had the heart attack, because it feels like it makes it her fault a little bit. Like, that bugs me. But
I
I don't think it dwelled on that enough to make
well,
me like feel
I
bad.
don't remember how explicit it is in the movie that she feels like it's her fault, but I do know in the book, at the like when she's writing her letter towards the end, and
Hmm.
she does say, like, oh well, the ME said it probably, that the kick wouldn't have caused it, basically.
Right.
That it might have been a small factor, but it was coming regardless. And I think
Right.
that I always took it not as the kick actually caused a heart attack, just as her guilt feeling that the kick caused a heart attack. So it
Now
didn't.
that you remind me of that, I agree, because, like, I felt the whole time like, gosh, I hate that she feels like this is her fault, which is good storytelling. It
Mhm.
just it I didn't want the book to make feel like it was her fault, and so by the end, when
Right.
it does that, you're right, it does resolve that aspect pretty well. Um, I think that Stephen King, a lot of his characters that he writes are very flawed characters, and a lot of times
Mhm.
that's really okay. And we talked about a little bit with Paul Sheldon in the last one, that, like, if we hadn't been able to hear his thoughts, he would have been a much more sympathetic person, because he was
Mhm.
just kind of
Right.
He was kind of a jerk in his mind a lot, which
Mhm.
is fairly common in a Stephen King character, I think. I feel like that is true here also to a small extent, although not nearly as bad.
Mhm.
In fact, once she's like the victim, I feel all sympathy for her. So I know, so it's not similar to Paul Sheldon where I was like, I want him to not die, but I also don't care about him as a person very much.
Mhm.
I did care about her as a person especially because it like unfolds
Right.
into more and more of her trauma and stuff like that. So I think that was executed fairly well. Before she gets stuck and everything like that, basically the first like fifth of the book is her like dick shaming her husband and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh god, am I going to have to sit through another just character I don't care about for a whole thing in their internal
Mhm.
monologue? Which luckily that didn't happen because I did
Right.
come to care for Jesse quite a lot
Mhm.
throughout this. But overall, I did not as a book as a whole, it just did not it didn't click for me. I thought it was fine. I don't
Mhm.
regret it. There is a Stephen King book I wish I hadn't read, and I'm gonna have to read it again for this. And I won't say what that is, but we'll get to it eventually. This is not anywhere near like that. This is not bottom of the
Okay.
barrel Stephen King or anything like that. It just wasn't. It wasn't my favorite reading experience
Mhm.
overall as a book. How do you feel about it overall? Because I know we just talked about that aspect.
So again, I also don't love this one. I feel like the ones I love are going to be the ones that it takes a bit for us to get to because they have a lot of adaptations or they have like a show. So
Right.
so that's more difficult. But
Yeah.
I do think it does some things very well. And again, this goes back to Stephen King's strength being character.
Hmm.
And I think it does a really good job of building suspense and making us stay in the moment for it mostly taking place in her head.
Hmm.
Like, because even more so than the movie, if you've seen the movie, you know that, she's kind of seeing her husband and herself, or representing kind of what she's thinking and the voices she hears in her head throughout. But obviously, the book is much longer, and I just think I'm always amazed, kind of, when I'm still invested and still want to know what's going to happen because I'm
Hmm.
like, she is handcuffed to a bed for like 75% of the book. Like it shouldn't work. It
Hmm.
shouldn't, but it does because she has these voices in her head and yeah, and I think it does a good job of kind of teasing out her past in a
Hmm.
less in a like but last time we talked about how Stephen King has a tendency to foreshadow things. I
Hmm.
think like we knew something happened where they're dead, yes, but like what actually happened, like I don't think he really foreshadowed much at all. He just kind of
Right.
teased it out in a really good way. Um, that all being said, it's not my favorite.
Hmm.
Well, I already said that, so it's definitely not.
Right.
I think it's well done. It's just not my cup of tea as much
Hmm.
as a lot of his other work. It makes sense that I hadn't revisited it like in
Hmm.
all this time because it just wasn't one that I was like, oh my god, this is so good. I have to listen to it. I have to reread it or
Hmm.
any of that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where I
Yeah.
land on it.
Understood. I definitely get that. You mentioned the voices in her head, which I think is a I think that does a lot to help keep everything the pace moving and stuff like that
Hmm.
when you're going through all that because yeah it could start to feel very repetitive, especially because a lot
Hmm.
of the same things happen kind of over and over again. But I like that the voices in her head uh, are not only kind of fighting with each other over their best
Hmm.
things to do, but are
Hmm.
also like trying to help her, jog her own memories to be able
Right.
to figure out how to get out of this situation.
Hmm.
I think that is handled. I really like the way that is done, which makes it seem like, and we'll get to the adaptation here in a minute, but as you're reading it, it feels like a book that you wouldn't be able to adapt.
Correct.
It seems unadaptable, and we'll get to if it ends up working or not here in a moment. But yeah, as in terms of the book itself, that does keep everything kind of keeps the pace going, and especially because she also has to like go into her past to kind of figure her way out of this. You also get all that backstory and stuff, which will also keep it going. Because we did talk about last time how sometimes Stephen King will foreshadow. My dog woke up from a dream abruptly. We talked about last time how sometimes Stephen King will foreshadow things and even telegraph things in a way that kind of loses their suspense occasionally. What I liked about this is that it was constantly foreshadowing things and teasing what was going to happen. But like you said, it never felt like I knew what was going to happen. Because I had seen the movie, I knew that she was going to get out. But as I'm reading the book, I don't ever feel like the book is telling me that she's going to get out. In fact, the book makes it feel like how on earth could she possibly ever get out?
Exactly.
Like, so I think that was done very effectively as well. Let's talk about the space cowboy / moonlight.
I was just thinking. I was curious how you felt about what that ends up being.
Okay, so
I kind of want to think about that character. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that would be really good. I think that character is very, very interesting. And here's the fun thing. Moonlight Man has become the kind of thing that he's called because that's what the movie calls him, and so that has become in the kind of discussion what we call him. However, in the book, he doesn't ever call him that. He calls him the Space Cowboy, which I thought was dumb. I was like, I don't know why she's calling him Space Cowboy, except that from the song. I don't know why she keeps referencing it like it's going to be like there's any connection between this guy and that song. It just must have been the song that was on Stephen King's mind when he was writing it. So I'm glad we have a new name for this guy. I mean, we have his real name, but the name that we call him. I think he is very creepy. I like that for most of the book, we do not know if he's there, if he's not there, if he's real. In fact, here's a thing that I feel like falls short, and there is disagreement in the King community. We're going to read about it a little bit here in a moment as to whether or not the ending of this book works. Because for me, she is constantly acting like, or treating this as though it's a manifestation of her father, and or something like she suspects it might be. She even talks about how he's her dad, like he has the eclipse face on or whatever, like from when and so like it feels like that's where it's leading, and then once we get to the ending of it, then it becomes this thing where she's like trying to figure out, is this guy real or not? She finds out he is real, and that he is actually a murderer, and potentially was in that room with her, though we don't. It's still kind of up for if he was actually in that room, although it kind of feels like he probably was.
Yeah, I didn't even think that was open to interpretation, to be honest.
Oh, you didn't think it was open to
interpretation? No, especially when he has the box of stuff and everything else. Yeah, no. Yeah. To me, it was very clear he was really there.
Well, but then the footprint is gone later. Like it's there in her mind, and then it's not there later. So I don't. Yeah, so that's the thing that kind of leads me to think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that he ends up being a real person. I thought that since this seems to be journey through her trauma and her reliving her trauma to have to get out of this thing, that him being a representation of her father and her escaping that situation and basically having to outlive this thing and survive through this whole thing would be, I thought if it had ended with her having to face down this representation of her father and finally be able to heal from that whole thing, that would have been awesome. So the fact that it was a real person and we see this guy and he was probably actually in that room was a little bit disappointing to me, because I was like, I kind of hoped it had some thematic significance to this thing, right. Which it doesn't end up having. So how do you feel about the Space Cowboy /
So I'm a little bit torn because I like his story. So like I'm glad I got that, but at the same time, like that could have just been a whole separate thing. It's kind of shoehorned in here, and it's her telling of it basically from what she's seen in newspapers and police reports. But so on one hand, like retroactively wanting him to not be real, I don't get his story, which would, now make me sad. But I think in terms of the themes of the movie in the book and just take away the fact that I know where his story went, I do think that being ambiguous would have been my preferred. Like, I don't want him to say definitely not real, but I liked... Yeah. Of course, if it was ambiguous, I'd be like, well, is he fucking real or not? But, that's sometimes the fun of it is, and then discussing that and interpreting it with clues and whatnot. I do feel like him being real also just casts the sinister vibe over it that then you start thinking about, well, when he was there and what was happening and the fact that he was real and stuff. But it's retroactive. So it doesn't make the book creepier as it goes. It's just, she's so afraid obviously she's not positive either way. That's why we're not positive either way for most of the book. But she's scared enough that it propels her into action because he'll come back, or she thinks he'll come back. So,
well, it propels her into action that she's afraid he's going back, but she spends way too much time in that house after she gets out of the thing
100%.
For someone afraid of someone who's going to come back. If you can't make the phone call, leave the house immediately. At least be where someone could see you if they drove by. I like the idea that I like what you said, which is I wish he had his own book. I wish that character was just the character in a different book where we get all of his stuff. Right. That would have been way better to me. But okay, before we move on to the movie, I have a couple of thoughts and a couple questions real quick. First of all, and this is just because I've lived with a nurse for the last 15, 16 years. She cuts an artery in her arm. It says that it mentions specifically she cuts an artery. Then she goes and takes 4 Excedrin.
Oh my God!
Pills.
Oh, you're going exactly where I was going to go.
which has 2 different things that thin your blood.
And she says it. She knows. It's continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. It's there's aspirin in there plus the anti-inflammatory. Both things are going to make her bleed more. She takes them and then falls asleep and then doesn't die, wakes up and says, oh, I guess the blood stopped going. No, the blood shouldn't have stopped going. You should be dead.
I guess it depends on how long she was asleep.
I guess that's true, but she did stop bleeding. And and because she cut something that goes directly to the heart and thinned her blood out, it feels like she should have been dead. But we just have to trust that the book is telling us the truth, and she didn't die, and she stopped bleeding somehow.
With the blood loss, even taking away the fact that she took the medication, which at first I was like, well, maybe she doesn't know when she was going to do it. And then she said it was a blood thinner. And she was like, oh, well, at this point, does it matter? And I'm like, it might. But with all the blood loss, I did have like a slight issue with the fact that she was still like not only still alive, but like doing things. But I just had to kind of in my head think like, okay, well, you hear these crazy stories of people who, you know, got hit by a car or got shot or something, and they're lying there and everyone thinks they're dead, and then like it turns out they're not. But or like they get found much later and they're still somehow alive. And so I'm like, it does, crazy things do happen. The body can be miraculous that way, I guess. But I had to just keep telling myself that because, yeah, typically speaking, I mean, in the movie, we do not see nearly the carnage that results from this degloving that we get in the book. Like
that's true. I feel like the movie handles it a lot more realistically as well, but we'll get to that in just a moment. I will say that if I have to, which I do, I have to suspend my disbelief on this, believe that the book is telling me the truth and that everything's fine. What I have to assume is that when she thought she cut through an artery, she didn't.
She didn't.
And and that's just, and there's no reason she should know exactly what she's cutting through. She's not a doctor. So like, it's she just didn't cut through that artery. Then the last thing I want to ask you about before I move on to your final thoughts on the book and then we go on to the movie. Do you think that Jessie has The Shining? Because she can, and this is what makes me think this. When at the end of the book, when she's talking to her, whoever that person is, Maggie, whatever, whoever that person is that she's talking to at the end, not those she's writing to, but no, not Ruth, her like
younger self,
the person that lives with her.
The maid / like
whoever that is,
cook, her caretaker. Yeah, I don't remember her name. Maggie's.
She at some point thinks something and knows that woman can hear it or whatever. Like she's like, she knows what I thought. Not only that, but there's a connection to Dolores Claiborne, which I have not read or seen. If I had known that, this would have been the next book we did, but we already have a plan, so we're not going to.
I was actually going to suggest that originally, but it was another Kathy Bates movie, and I was just like, okay, well, maybe we should, because again, with the Women's History Month and choosing a female character, and I was actually going to originally go with Dolores Claiborne.
You know what? We can make this in real time. Because the next one we were going to do was another Rob Reiner movie. So it's not like we're not repeating here.
That's true.
Do we just want to do Dolores Claiborne next, and then we can?
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Let's do it. All right, and then we can move our other thing just down a little, shift it down a little bit. Okay. So anyway, there's a connection to Dolores Claiborne, where she sees her during the eclipse. She sees
the well,
the well. She sees in that. So she clearly has some sort of a precognitive something, some sort of a thing where she can see different people into different people's lives. At least she can kind of see into someone else's mind or project her voice into someone else's mind. Not to mention that we never get really an explanation for those voices, except for that they are her, but they are so disparate and clearly speaking to her that it feels more like Tony than it feels like a person's actual thoughts. So my question is, do you think Jessie has The Shining?
So I hadn't thought about this at all. So you're going to get my just off the cuff thoughts. Regarding the maid character, the way I interpreted that interaction was that the maid knew her so well. She knew that what she was going to do, regardless of what she said. But as far as the other things go, I did notice the Dolores Claiborne well, and I thought that was kind of cool and weird, but I didn't I don't know why I didn't think of it in terms of The Shining, probably just because I didn't think of the voices in that way either. I can see that. I mean, she does a kind of, the voices are people that she has known in a lot of ways, so she kind of gives them the personality traits of those people. So I guess for me, I have to think of, what do I think The Shining is, and do I kind of redefine that a little bit to include what she does, what she experiences? Because to me, The Shining was always very much just like, the mind reading, telepathy, psychic ability, precog, postcog, all that kind of stuff. But I think that she probably has a touch of it. I don't think she's very strong in it, because I don't think she's really communicating mentally with people. But again, like in her, I don't even know what you call them, dreams, like visions. They're not really visions. It's kind of weird.
Right.
But the well thing is kind of like, there's no real other explanation for that. Like it doesn't fit in with anything else. And I can see the voices, like you said, being like Tony, maybe a bit more. And it's tough because Tony is so abstract in a lot of ways. Like I never really think of him as like a separate person, although he kind of is, I guess. In the end, it's been a hot minute since I've revisited that stuff, but that is one of my favorites. That we're talking about The Shining when we're talking about Tony.
Yes.
Danny Torrance's internal friend. So
well, there's also the fact that one of the voices in her head is her as a child,
right?
Which I don't remember if the book addresses this at all, but in the TV miniseries of The Shining, Tony was the adult version of Danny. So right. that also makes me kind of feel like there's a connection.
She kept having she saw that like woman in white, like the old that was never fully explained. She saw that as a child and then remembered seeing it after the sexual abuse. Seemed to be like a ghost pretty much, or like some sort of imprinted I don't know what you would call it, like a memory of the place they were at or something. So that also lends itself to The Shining. But I think it's weak. So that's my answer. After dissecting it all out loud, my answer is, I think she has a weak shine.
Yeah, I think that that's probably correct. Also, if we want to consider the space cowboy / Moonlight Man to have not been there, then that could be part of that as well, especially because he knew her also, which I always thought, because again, I get it from the movie, and the movie makes it feel like he was not there and that they just have a connection. That's kind of where I would put that as well, that there was a connection between them through the possibility of a shine. I don't know. I think that she might shine. But do you have any final thoughts on the book before we move on to the movie?
No, I think anything else I might say in comparison to the movie. But like I said, it's not, I don't love it. I probably won't revisit it. I'm getting old, so maybe ever. I don't know. Like I'm middle-aged, so it could be never. But I do think it did a lot of things really well. And as far as the adaptation goes, I just want to start by saying that, like you mentioned, that the book reads as inadaptable, and this was one of the 2 Stephen King novels that were not supposed to be adaptable whatsoever, that Mike Flanagan did a great job of adapting. So when we'll talk about the other one in the future, I love the other one.
Nice. Yes, let's talk about the movie, because I liked the movie the first time I watched it. after reading the book and then watching it this time, I appreciated the movie a little bit more, but
liked it less.
Loved it. No.
Oh,
I
really?
loved it so
Okay.
much more than I loved the book. Like, and that's going to be, that's not going to be a theme here, because we're going to get into stuff that I'm going to feel better about the book than I do the movie. And I promise, but just 2 in a row where this has happened. Because I felt, and part of it is that the adaptation, the way he adapted it from something unadaptable into something that makes complete sense, just the wonder of that is kind of part of it. The movie is good. It's not a great S tier type movie. It's a really, really good movie that is adapted from a book I didn't really love. So like that in itself just kind of elevates it a little bit for me. I'll say that having the voices be her and her husband makes so much sense, because that's basically the battle that's going on in her head anyway, is between the person who's pro her husband and the voice that's pro her. Those two things make so much sense, and it's done so well. So you're not just hearing a voiceover. You're not, she's not speaking these things just out loud to no one. It's conversation between her husband, and herself. And I think that was the absolute best way you could possibly adapt this. I can't think of a way that you could do any better than what Mike Flanagan did with that situation.
I agree with that sentiment. So I didn't love the movie more or like the movie more than the book necessarily, but I think the movie made all the right choices and did the best it could with this book. And it made it a good movie. Like, if you haven't read the book and you watch the movie, you can enjoy the movie. It's not like, oh, it made a bad movie out of an unadaptable book. Like, it made a decent movie out of an unadaptable book. There are changes that I don't, for me, I guess what it is mostly, and this will be a common occurrence probably, is that the movie feels a little bit rushed to me, which I completely understand. You're making a full book into like a 2-hour movie or whatever. And also you need to keep the audiences engaged in the fact that this mostly is just a 1-bedroom character stuck on a bed. And you don't want to draw that out for too long, because it's going to get boring. I do think you were right in the choice to make the voices herself and her husband was really good. I don't like it better than how it works in the book, though. I think that I think again he did the best thing he could do with this. But I did kind of miss, we just got so much more from them in the book, and again, this is why it feels a little rushed to me. And then I think that because we didn't have time, and it would have felt really weird and out of place to get the backstory of the Moonlight dude, whatever he's being called. So like he felt tacked on almost for me with the movie. But again, that's not, and I mean, either he had to change the ending completely, which I don't think would have been necessarily the best idea, or he had to kind of tack it on, because you don't have the time and to have his backstory. And again, even in the book, it was like, well, this is really great, but it should be its own thing. So I do enjoy the movie. I had watched it like when it first came on Netflix. I didn't really remember how it differed. I knew obviously that it wasn't exactly the same as the book, and so rewatching it now right after reading the book, I don't know that I liked it less necessarily, but I did have a lot more kind of maybe qualms. The one thing about the movie, though, that I'm happy that it was made into a movie is I have a hard time picturing the hand logistics when she's dealing with the shelf. Like I have like a really hard time envisioning that while I'm reading it. So I like seeing it in the movie a lot. because I'm always like, yeah, just trying to, and I'm like, just don't spend too much time on it, Stacy. Just you don't have to actually see it, because a lot of times I read and I like see stuff so clearly in my mind that I think movies have scenes they don't have because I saw that scene in my head reading the book. So, but I had to just let that go a bit for the shelf situation.
I go. Sorry, go ahead and finish.
Oh, I was going to say they aged her up a little bit. The child part, they aged up a little bit. I mean, it was like 10 versus 12, so that I don't really know why, except for maybe they wanted to use an older actress to be in that part, which kind of would make sense because of the subject matter. But yes, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to agree with you on this shelf thing. Like, I thought that really all of that stuff, everything basically that she had to do with her hands, all made a lot more sense when seeing it actually happen. I will say that the movie, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, switches which hand everything is happening with, because I think that she like does everything with her right hand in the movie and does everything with her left hand in the book. I think that's how it goes, but I'm not sure. Not that it matters. I just happened to notice that because everything that was happening, I was imagining on the other side of the bed.
I mean, it could just be that Carla Giacchino, is that her name? I always feel like I'm mispronouncing. It could just be that she was right-handed or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't notice that switch.
But I agree that it's not better in the movie versus the book as far as the way that they did the voices. I just think that the way that they did it was a perfect way to change it.
Yes.
Like that's when we're talking about adaptation. A good adaptation makes the changes that make sense for the movie.
Right. And make it a visual medium versus happening in my imagination.
Yes, exactly. So I thought that they absolutely did that. That was an absolute perfect way they did it. As far as the Moonlight Man being tacked on, I agree that it felt tacked on, but I also feel that way about it at the end of the actual book. I feel like it just doesn't feel like the same thing. Like it doesn't feel like they're part of the same book. So it does feel tacked on in both cases. I like that. I like the ending a little bit more in the book because we get less information about it. I like it more in the movie than I do in the book because I feel like it's less definitive and that I enjoy more.
She's not looking at the police photos, evidence photos of the box that he had in the room and whatnot. So
right,
yeah.
I also think that because I had said that the movie handles the logistics of her leaving, her escape, a lot more believably. In that, not only does she just leave, like she leaves. But she also passes out from blood loss and crashes the car. Like, so like it feels like it feels like probably Mike Flanagan or whoever adapted it was like, surely she would have not.
Well, she does pass out from blood loss, but it's after she crashes the car because she thinks she sees him. Then she passes out and wakes up the next day and drives herself to that like diner gas station place.
Yeah.
But no, the amount of blood loss in the book, like for people who haven't read it, it looks like the way it's described is like an entire family was butchered in that room and then like just spread around. Like it is like a lot of blood, like a lot of blood. And so like everything she does is kind of like, how is she doing that? And when she gets in the car, I'm like this can't go well. Like this is such a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I do think that it being less blood and it happening quicker makes the movie more believable in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I will say that in the book, I just thought about this, was that the amount of time that Stephen King spends describing her unlocking the handcuff key is insane. Man, the meal he made out of her unlocking that, which it should seem difficult, but it wasn't that it seemed difficult. He just described it like it was a 14th century satire of the of the royalty in the area or something. Like it was just so much. There's another thing. I just got reminded of a thing with the book that bothers me across Stephen King's entire library, and that is every time he calls a vagina her sex in any book, which he does a lot, bugs me so much because he does it so much, and
I don't even
weird.
register it. Like until now, I'm gonna probably notice it all the time because you said that. But I have never registered that being a thing that he does a lot. So that's funny.
He does it a lot. He did it a lot in this book.
Yeah. I guess again, I think it goes back to when I started reading King, that a lot of things are just like normal to me because
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that is funny. I will note that like sometimes I have to remind myself how old he is.
Yeah.
When I read some of the terminology and phrasing that he uses for stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, well he's like in his 70s now, I think, right? Like he's pretty damn old. So when he wrote this stuff, those were words that made sense to use.
Yeah, well, and that does make sense, and he does. And it's funny because there are certain phrases that he'll use in several different books, and it's like, I recognize that from before, but then like it's not. And then like I'll go, and then there'll be just like a bunch of books without it in it, and I'm like, he must have been during a certain time period. Just that must have been a very common thing. Like it's not just things like that he uses. He talks about Blue Oyster Cult a lot in books, but that he also talks about the it's unlucky to light 3 cigarettes on one match or whatever. That appears in several books, and so there's certain things that just appear in a lot of books, and they just have they just must be things that are just in his mind, and the ways that he uses to describe things. It's just when he calls things her sex, it calls specifically female genitalia her sex, is weird to me, especially because it often happens, and I'm certain that this is why he does it. Because it happens most often when he's talking about a child, and he probably doesn't want to call, like he probably doesn't want to reference that. Like he probably wants to blunt it a little bit. Is probably what it has. It just it's probably that's the case, and it probably does. The problem is that
there's enough children's vaginas in his books.
Yes.
There's a term. That's sort of the issue. Again, I go back to like Stephen King is not gross, and I don't think he's gross. And I sometimes am like, we didn't really need that when it comes to sexual stuff in his books. But yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Another thing I want to mention about the movie is that I thought that, and we're gonna actually. I'll save it till we read the fan comments because there's something that I do want to talk about, but somebody else brought it up, and I think it's absolutely apt. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. I think we're gonna. Last time when we did the fan comments, we did it after we did our ranking, but or our tier ranking. But the comments also made us question our tier ranking. So I'm thinking we're going to do comments first and then do our tier ranking next. But before we get to the number one fans, what do you have any final things to say about the movie itself, or the adaptation, or it as an adaptation?
I don't think so. I mean, for me, this is all very kind of in the middle, average, like. So yeah, I just don't have a ton to say about it in general.
No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, then let's move on. Oh, I will say that I thought that Carla Giacchino, whatever, I should have learned how to pronounce her name. However we pronounce her name, I thought she was great.
She is great.
That role. And the guy who plays the Moonlight Man is also the fireman on Twin Peaks, and he also, I mean, he's also in Doctor Sleep. This whole thing is just full of Mike Flanagan people. Oh, that's the other thing. We're talking about Mike Flanagan people. I think that casting Henry Thomas as her dad was genius because he has to feel likable.
Right, because she still likes him.
Yes. Yeah. Especially in her mind, like he has to be a very likable person and a person that you're disappointed in once you, I mean, you're going to be disappointed in anybody, but you have to get maximum disappointment out of this guy when the thing happens. And I think Henry Thomas is absolutely the perfect person to do that because he's so likable and you're just so disappointed.
And I think also like non-threatening, like his presence is very non-threatening, which I think it lends itself to like the shock that it happened, but also to like the fact that she kind of forgave it and she didn't really move on, but she like maintained the relationship and stuff.
Another thing that I think the book or the movie did really, really well, and it's just such a very, very small moment, is we're told how much her mom hates her or whatever. And the thing, we know as people that that's probably not true. Her mom loves her, probably. It's just she has this idea of her mom. And a lot of that has to come from the fact that her dad was grooming her to some extent. Because that's part of the whole thing is that like he picked out her dress, he did all of the things, he set that whole thing up. It wasn't an accident.
Right.
So the fact that there is some grooming happening with her dad, and her mom clearly recognizes something that's not right
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. What I love is that they show all of that with the mom and make it feel like maybe she doesn't like that there's some animosity there. However, with that scene at the dinner table, when she gets up and leaves, her mom looks so concerned for her. Like I thought that was a genius bit of like, oh, that's who her mom is. Her mom is not the person that her dad has placed in her mind. That's who her mom is. And so I think that, or not, where she crushes the glass. That's what it was. At the dinner table, where she crushes the glass. Her mom looks so concerned for her, and like you see the motherly feeling in her. So I thought that was absolutely genius. Is that the book just kind of leaves it at her mom hated her, but this you kind of felt like, oh, you can see kind of where what that the influence of her father has kind of caused. All right. So after a brief technical intermission for some audio issues, we are back and we are going to talk about, we're going to go to the number one fans for some comments, some thoughts about the book and the movie. I asked the question on the Stephen King subreddit, r/Stephen King, asking them basically what they thought about the movie, what they thought about the book, and how do they feel about the ending of the book and the movie. I also put it to the Discord, the Dill Pickle Movie Network Discord. I asked them because we got some friends in there who like Stephen King stuff, what they thought. And I'll start with the Discord. First, Chadwick Webb says, I love the book and movie. It's like the best of both worlds because it's my favorite author and one of my favorite directors. Flanagan brought that to screen that I never thought I would see it, and it's just such a brilliant adaptation of it, which I think we both agreed was true. That was a really great adaptation. Carly, our friend Carly Perkins says, I don't remember if he had a name with the creepy man. I don't remember if he had a name with the creepy man she keeps seeing in the dark. Freaked me out. I got to rewatch the movie though. I haven't read the book, but maybe once I finish The Long Walk, which she is currently reading. Anytime this movie is brought up, I mix it up with Molly's Game in my head for a second. So she has a very similar. Lots of games.
The thing is, I love Deadly Game books and movies, and none of the ones we've mentioned are actually like a good Deadly Game thing, though.
I know, right? Noah Khan says, I've never heard of Gerald's Game. And then Dylan Randazzo, the founder of the Dill Pickle Movie Network, your friend and mine, said, I love that one. It's so bittersweet seeing a man play chess with himself, but it's really clever in such a short runtime. I love that it won the Oscar. He's obviously thinking of Jerry's Game, the Pixar short that won the Oscar for animated short.
Yes, also by Stephen King, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. All right. So now let's go over to the Reddit. What's interesting is we got a few good comments, or we got some good comments here, but we also got like some back and forth between people about some of this. So I'm gonna read as much of this as I can. Turbulent Loss 2726 said the book was fine. I remember the degloving scene and the end of the book turning into a courtroom drama. Are you going to talk about the connection to Dolores Claiborne? Yes, we did talk about it, and we decided in real time that we're going to do that one as our next book. Disaster B says, the thing that impressed me most about Gerald's Game adaptation is how, despite the majority of the movie featuring a woman in underthings chained to a bed, it doesn't feel exploitative or sexual gaze framed, and that's damn impressive. And I agree, and that's the thing I wanted to talk about here, because Disaster B goes on to say, because a particular loose 6868 or 6878 said, I never thought about that, but it's true. And Disaster B goes on to say, honestly, the reason I waited a bit to watch the adaptation, at the time I wasn't aware of Flanagan's other than as a name, and I was concerned about the adaptation, about how the adaptation was filmed. It's such a difficult book to adapt, considering the majority of the action takes place while the main character is chained alone, naked to a bed. But I saw good buzz, and a friend was a big Flanagan fan at the time already, so I ended up watching it, and I was blown away by how unsexy this movie is, which is a high compliment. It should not be sexy. It's uncomfortable and visceral and makes your skin crawl exactly how it should. This is an adaptation that would be so easy to go in a different sort of uncomfortable direction, with focus on the sexual taboo aspect and highlight the vulnerability of the main character in a very exploitative and performative way, especially without having the narrative prose and the internal character narration of the book, which keeps the book pretty grounded in the right kind of uncomfortable horror. It feels a lot easier to maintain and emphasize in that text than visually. This is the first thing I saw from Flanagan, and this is one of the reasons it made me sit up and take note of him. The movie I watched was not the movie I expected from a male director. That's the thing that I was going to mention earlier that I said, we'll talk about it when we get to it, because for a book that takes place there, that is completely, almost entirely a naked woman, completely naked, chained to a bed, the movie does not exploit that at all. It's not sexy. It's not sexual.
No. I actually made a comment to my boyfriend that nothing makes bondage less sexy than Gerald's Game. Like the movie and the book. Like, if you ever want to just desexify bondage completely, this is the property for you.
Right. And well, it's a good cautionary tale, because there should always be safeguards against this kind of thing happen.
That's why you get the novelty handcuffs. Don't go with the real handcuffs.
Right. Gerald was the villain here for many reasons, but one of them is that he refused to go with the novelty handcuffs because he wanted the control. It's like, no, buddy, you got to stay safe. You got to have safe words. You got to you got to be able to differentiate between the fantasy and real life. The whole thing is just a cautionary tale, not against kink play, but how to do it safely.
Right. Also, like, how well do you know the person that you're with?
Right.
Because,
right.
There's that aspect.
Listen, here at Matty Loves Movies, we say get your kink on, but do it responsibly.
Pro kink. Yeah, do it responsibly.
Shadow Dog Prod said, I really like the conceit of Ghost Husband to her. So I really like the conceit of Ghost Husband to give her somebody to talk to, since 90% of the book is just her thoughts. The only way this movie was filmable, in my opinion, a lesser filmmaker would have either had her talk out loud to herself or use narration, which is what I said. Fun fact, the actor who played the weird dude at the end played the weird tall dude in Twin Peaks. Which God damn it, Dax says, they both have the same issue. The book is about 75 pages too long, and the movie is about 15 minutes too long. Jesse's inner monologue while she struggles to find her way out of this current situation and deal with the past is fascinating. It's the real meat of the story, but once she gets out of the house, the extended epilogue just doesn't do anything for me at all, which I feel similarly about.
Again, as I've said, I liked it, but wish it was its own separate thing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah. Both would have been far better if we had known if the apparition Jesse saw was a physically real being, some sort of supernatural representation of death, or just a figment of her imagination. King normally excels at leaving the right things up for a reader's interpretation, but he felt he needed to explain every little thing in this book, and it just falls flat. I understand that Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne, the companion novel, are both about trauma and how it affects primary characters, and that King wanted to explore the ultimate mental resolution of trauma, but he went too far in this case. There's nothing wrong with Gerald's Game. It's fine, but it's not the masterpiece that Dolores Claiborne is, which is interesting because I have not read that. So that's high praise for Dolores Claiborne there. And they go on to say, as far as I can remember, there are only two major changes from book to film. In the book, Gerald comes off as a pretty reprehensible character, even preparing to rape Jessie once she's in the cuffs. Movie Gerald is a little cold, and his relationship with Jessie is obviously troubled, but at least in her mind, he's trying to help her out in her situation. She wasn't happy in their marriage, but the film version, you get the idea that they could have worked things out with a little more honesty, assuming mental Jared is similar to real Gerald. Very much not the case in the book. I do understand the change. If you got Bruce Greenwood to, if you've got Bruce Greenwood, you use Bruce Greenwood, and keep
Fair
all
point.
the mental, and keep all the mental characters from just being Jessie herself. It's a good change for the film medium and works well. And then their second point here is, in the movie, Gerald's heart attack comes on unassisted, or at least with no kickstart, pun intended, from Jessie, where in the book it's at least implied that she's at least guilty of manslaughter. I think at least if anything, it's defense, which might
Yeah,
fall
and
under manslaughter.
again,
I don't know.
I always interpreted it, and maybe this is just partly because of her character and how she is. I always interpreted it as more just that she was afraid that she contributed to the heart attack, and she was afraid that, and she had that guilt more than ever actually saying that she did.
Right. But there's at least, she's at least involved. The circumstances lead to some involvement there. So this gets covered up by the dog feasting on him, so she's not held accountable for it. But it's a significant change. Kind of flows along with the changes to Gerald's character, making him more of a cold fish than an outright villain. So we really don't need to see Jessie physically lash out at Gerald, which makes a lot of sense. Both are decent, not top tier King novels or filmed adaptations, but not bad either. Solid C+ efforts for both. All right, so then this is where there's a little bit of back and forth. This person got some down votes, which I'm going to give this an upvote to at least bounce that out a little bit. Sorry.
That's okay.
The
I never
write-up,
downvote anything, so I just don't understand downvoting. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. Jim B. Smith Jr. says, good write-up, but I personally disagree regarding finding out the space cowboy is real. I'd sort of figured he was either a figment of her imagination, or if real, was something magical, like a manifestation of her fears. When I read the book, she first drops his name and starts explaining the history. I loved it. Had a moment like, holy shit, he's real. On the first read, I absolutely loved the book. Second one, a bit less. I'd probably have to rank it maybe around 20 of King's work. I don't know that I'd rank it that high, but
Me neither. But
yeah. And then Disaster Bee from earlier, who we heard from, comments on this one, says, I think I also have to disagree on the ending. I feel like if it had been left open, it wouldn't have had as much impact. There would have been there wouldn't have been that final punch. It's a fantastic reversal of the usual trope. The thing was never real in the first place. It was all in her head, remains such a common and overused ending. The audience is led to come to the conclusion her visitor wasn't real, though, through the prose, and we think we know what went down, and then bam, one last crazy twist, which does make sense. And I maintain that, like, I can see that and I get that. it's not that I wish he wasn't real or was real or anything like that. I wish that I wanted it to be a representation of her father that she had to overcome. Like that's the thing I wanted, and that's the reason for the disappointment. But I do understand what they're saying. That does.
I had a crazy thought that it shouldn't probably open this can of worms now, but with the tall guy being so recognizable, and how we discussed the possibility of the shine. Is he the same tall guy from Dr. Sleep? No, because the same actor, he was part of those people that ate the shine. And yeah that's a fun thing to think about. Was that why attracted him there was, he was shine hungry.
Maybe. I mean, that could be. I don't know. I'd have to, of course, we'd have to do more than just speculate and then probably be found wrong because I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, because it's an actor in movies by Mike. Like, it's not a character.
It is an interesting.
It's not the same character.
About. It would be cool if it was. Maybe they're twinners.
Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Dark Tower, I'll finish Disaster B's comment here. Speaking of Dark Tower, Ghost. And this also leads to that she has the shining because Ghost Gerald said all things serve the beam.
Oh yeah.
The book has no reference to Dark Tower.
No, just like I think Derry exists in the book, so therefore the Dark Tower exists in the
it's but in the movie he says all things serve the beam. Which is actually her. She's the one who thinks all things serve the beam.
Yeah,
which
so you're right.
That she could have the shining.
Yeah, the weak shine. I stand by my weak shine theory now that I have it. Now that I've adopted this weak shine theory,
I can dig it. Perhaps if she allowed all of her different personalities inside of her to function as one, she would have a strong shine, but they split the shine between them. I don't know, maybe. Anyway, so and I can say for me that the most frightening part of the book, or it was the most frightening part of the book, to realize the moment how much danger there had been, what was really going on, the way that the reveal recontextualized the scenes from before. I also think it really fits as an emphasis on Jessie's experience. She was doubting her own understanding of things. She's in a near delirious state at times. Reality gets fuzzy due to her mental condition. And the way the book is written, particularly with the Moonlight Man, the audience is joining her on that. We are doubting. We are unsure whether it's real or not and what the Moonlight Man is. We go through the same confusion and unsurety that Jessie goes through right up until the truth is revealed. For me, it's also just such a great way to emphasize the themes of the story. This one really delves into that favorite of Kings, human evil / the horror of other people. And I think it's important in the context of the story that Jessie herself gets closure on the experience. Knowledge in the wake of the difficult to understand trauma is really important, and I don't think that ending would be satisfying without that. I don't think everything needs to be ambiguous. Not all the stories from behind are open to interpretation. Gerald's game wasn't written to be ambiguous, and honestly feel that an ambiguous ending would have taken the wind out of the story. But to each their own. What works for one person isn't going to work for another. That's absolutely true. I agree with that. Everybody's right. But also, I agree with this person for what they're saying, except for the part where it would have. And this just goes back to the thing that I wish it had been. I don't want an ambiguous ending. I want to have known that it was a manifestation of her father that she had to overcome.
You want a different version of the book.
Yeah, I want something that we didn't get. I that would have satisfied the foreshadowing for me a lot better. I can see what they are saying though, like that it was, the danger is other people, and so that does make sense. It just didn't.
I just always like the fact that he didn't set her free. Like, I feel like that's why she spits at him at the end. It's a combination of spitting on her husband, her dad, and like all of them. But also like you could have let me go. Like, you were there. I asked for help, because that's one of the first things she does is ask for help from him. When,
right.
you know, and it's like, but no, you just watched me be stuck. Like, she did. So, and I always think about that too. And I'm like, I mean, yes, it would have been horrific, but, and obviously then everything would have ended, like, it wouldn't have worked narratively for a book or a movie, but just me thinking, like, in the character's place, that I'd be real pissed. I'd be real pissed that he didn't let me go.
For sure. I think there's value to any direction that goes to. There's obviously just the way I would have preferred, but yeah, you make a good point there as well. The last little comment here, had promise, but then didn't pan out. It said, it's been a while since I read the book. How long do I have to answer with research? I remember I had to walk away several times. I wanted to know the ending, so I came back. I had the same experience with Rose Matter, which is a book I really, really liked.
I love Rose Matter. There's no adaptation of it, unfortunately.
I know. So either we're going to have to wait until an adaptation of that book happens, or we're just going to have a special Rose Matter episode. Because I really love that book. But I had the same experience with Rose Matter and Dolores Claiborne. I think SK must know women or a woman who has been horribly abused and was able to write from that POV so well. I was impressed with how close the movie adaptation was to the book. And then I said, we're recording next Saturday, so you have about a week. And then we didn't actually end up recording by then. But they also did never come back with a response to it. But they did have some valuable things to add, despite wanting to say more. But yeah, so that is hearing from the number one fans. Which brings us to the tier ranking, which I will pull up right now.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments, because I really like this. I like getting the hearing what other people think, and then, convincing me that I'm wrong, generally speaking.
All right, so here are the tiers. Hold on, sorry, I am not ready actually. There we go. All right. There we go. All right, so here are the tiers. If this is your first time joining us, I will just quickly read off the different tiers. The top tier, the S tier, is It Shines. A tier is Aims with the Eye, Shoots with the Mind, Kills with the Heart. B tier is Guardian of the Beam. C is Cully. D is Devilgrass. E is Everything's Ruined. And F has Forgotten the Face of Its Father. So now we're going to talk about what where Gerald's Game, the book, falls on the tier ranking. I'll let you start with your thoughts on.
So I'm gonna just have to kind of had to retrain my mind and how I think about it in terms of ranking, because it has to be relative to other Stephen King books, right? Like, it's not helpful if the baseline is a C average, which I think generally with Stephen King books, I don't really dislike any of them that much. So that being said, if I'm relating it to other Stephen King books, I think it would be a D. And that's not for the quality. That's just for my enjoyment, because I think it is very well executed. So maybe a C. I guess, yeah, a C. This is always going to be my issue.
Well, if it helps, the thing with the tier ranking is to grade it without having to relate it to other Stephen King books, which you can use whatever criteria you want.
Well, but
it allows you to put it somewhere without saying it's better or worse than this one.
I don't think I'd ever put any Stephen King book below a C if I'm just comparing it to itself. So I guess that's why I'm trying to look at it that way.
And that makes sense.
And that's why. But I think that for the execution of the ideas and the themes, I would say C or D. I don't know. I'll let you determine if it's C or D for me.
I'm actually in a similar situation. It's definitely not E or F tier. It's not that low, but I'm kind of in the D or C if it's in terms of how much I how good of a time I had with it, it's D. But if it's in terms of execution, it's closer to a C. So I'm going to say that since we're both kind of straddling that, I'm going to say we can go ahead and put it in C if that's good with you, because it's not bad. It's
right.
Yeah, it's a
And
fine.
we can always move it later too if we find
exactly.
C tier is like overwhelmingly full.
Yeah, so. Yeah, we can move it if we need to, and because here's the thing, it's not that it's poorly written, because it's written well by a master craftsman of it's just that a lot of the way that a lot of it is presented just doesn't work as well for me, and so it does go a little bit. So I'm comfortable with a C on that. So all right, so we're gonna move from there to the tier ranking of the movie, and it has the same tier ranking levels. As you can see, misery is there in the aims with the eye, shoots with the mind, kills with the heart tier. But I'll go ahead and start here on Gerald's Game. As far as where I would put it, it's not as good as Misery to me, and I know I just said we don't have to qualify them in that. I think it's a really good movie, but not it doesn't ever reach like great movie status. It's a great adaptation.
Right.
It's not to A tier for me. So for me, I would put it in Guardian of the Beam. I'd put it B tier. What do you think?
I think that because I do like the book more, but it is a great adaptation, I'd also probably put it in Cully and keep it kind of along the same lines. It's tough to judge because, yeah, your enjoyment and the quality of the adaptation can have nothing to do with each other. So, but I think it is a well-made movie. I think it is a very well-done adaptation. But I don't love either of them. So
interesting. Okay. Then I think I'll defer to you here then, because I would put it pretty high B, but I do see what you're saying there, and I think that if we're calling the book C and we think this is a good adaptation and it's similar in quality, then yeah, we should probably, even though I think that I do prefer the movie, but I think this is a good place to put it. It's a solid C plus. So and that's not saying anything negative about the movie. Yes. Oh, that's fine. We're not saying anything negative about the movie. We're not saying
not
anything,
at all.
I
love Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
And I love him doing Stephen King. So I'm definitely not trying to disparage it.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Okay. Well, that is Gerald's Game. Do you have any final thoughts before we tease our next episode, which we've already teased several times?
No, I'm looking forward to delving in because I have not visited this in a very long time, and I remember even less about it. So,
nice. Well, I've never delved into either thing. I've seen the trailer for Dolores Claiborne, the movie, because it was on a tape that I used to watch a lot. But that's really all that my only experience with it. So, the next episode is we are going to cover Dolores Claiborne, the book, and Dolores Claiborne, the movie. Talk to us in the comments. What do you think about Gerald's Game? Did you think the adaptation was good? Would you rank it high? Would you put the book or movie in a higher tier than we did or a lower tier? Talk to us in the comments. We're going to let us know in the comments what you think about Dolores Claiborne, and we'll read it on the next episode. Once again, my name is Matt.
I'm Stacy.
Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.